Greetings everyone, and happy Bionicle Day, with something different but familiar. The Afterman Chronicles Issue 1, Bionicle's little cousin. And no, that is not a dig at this project. I won't be delving into every little detail since I do want people to support this comic by, actually reading it. But still, massive spoilers ahead. This tale begins on an ordinary day in a city inside, go figure, a superstructure in space. Feels just like home, but in an oddly liminal way. It's sorta like Metro Nui, including the impression of a giant eye looking at us from the skybox. But there's a more intimate melding of tech and nature here. Cables covered by mossy growths, as many trees as there are buildings in the street, and the surrounding countryside. The residents are more uniform in stature and build than the Toa and Matoran, and their bodies are more streamlined and compact than we're used to. Right from the get-go, they appear to be a midpoint between the piston-riddled Toa and the more human-like flesh and blood Glatorian. Unlike Matoran universe beings, these entities are fully aware that their world is artificial. In fact, that eye I mentioned is just the other side of this giant hatch. A door may be all that's protecting this entire biome from being sucked into space. It's less cells at work and more a Rama situation, everyone just waiting for the space bus to reach its next stop. And it does, in apocalyptic fashion. Yep, this is pretty familiar. We only meet a few survivors in issue 1. Let's take a closer look at them, see what makes them different. For one, or three, their mouths have 3 holes. They primarily use the middle one to eat, and their cheek holes to breathe through tubes attached to oxygen canisters, which is handy since the planet they landed on isn't breathable, at least not for long. Reminds me of how the Toa Mahri had all those tubes on them. Afterman's artwork is sharp, literally. Lead artist Henry Thornburg contains the finer, smaller details you'd expect on characters like these, drawn with thin lines, inside a much thicker outline that separates them from other objects and the backgrounds. Not a technique exclusive to this comic, but especially effective with such jagged character designs. Colorist Michael Neiman complements this style, using gradients and clearer tones in conjunction to give this world and its people scale. At first I thought the tiny things spraying out of this canister were some kind of healing nanotech or bacteria, but I've gotten in touch with the writer, Sandro Serrano, who clarified that these are phytoplankton, and Rita here wants to use them to trigger an oxygenation event. In another container reminiscent of a Matoran sphere, effectively foreshadowing that there's a person inside, we're shown a not insignificant departure from Bionicle. Blood. Yeah, maybe if he'd landed in the water he would have survived the impact. I always assumed a Toa's blood would be silver, like liquid protodermis or mercury. These beings were already a little different on the outside, but inside they're far more like us than the Toa or Matoran. They're almost crab-like, with collapsible shells and organs inside. There's also the obvious tonal shift. I mean, practically speaking, this really isn't any more violent or gory than Bionicle's later years. We had a character literally named Gorast in 2008, who skipped around singing about how she loves putting people's insides on the wrong side of their torso plating as a tribute to Makuta Terry. And it actually got worse in 2009, with the human-like Glatorian cutting each other down and sideways and slantways with just like normal swords. The difference is that was text. Here, we just see it, making it clear that this is not your unks romping a time before time. Further demonstrated as Rita disconnects one of his breathing tubes and directs the air into Kapiku. Despite appearances, Rita is not an airbender. He's a gas bender. Don't laugh. See, rather than commanding the elements like in Bionicle, which are more spiritual, Afterman leans harder into science, its characters controlling states of matter: gas, liquid, solid, and plasma. This incidentally cleans things up by condensing ice, earth, and stone into one element. Yes, plasma was a thing in Bionicle, but very underutilized. And yes, these characters do, or will, have mask powers, but these are connected to their ESM, Essential State Manipulation powers. Kinda like G2, I guess. Unfortunately, Rita's gas manipulation only succeeds in blasting dust out of Kapiku's lungs through their new holes. As Rita takes flight, I assume giving himself a boost with his ESM, I have to wonder how each planet's unique atmosphere and gravity affects his lift and speed, air resistance, assuming he's flown on other planets. Henry's posing makes him look very light on his feet. The issue ends with Rita catching a pair of stragglers as his mysterious quarry crosses a desert towards a mountain range, and the sun rises over 6 new yet familiar heroes. This is an outstanding first outing. It's funny, as much as it just barely doesn't line up with you know what, that's exactly what I like about it. Bionicle has been shackled long past both of its deaths. Some believe it can't really be Bionicle unless Tahu and other iconic characters are always front and center. That's all it is. I've long seen Bionicle as an anthology. I enjoyed 2009 and Barra Magna because they took familiar motifs, elemental themes, biomechanical creatures, exotic biomes, and ornate headgear, and mixed them up, put them in a new context. And I've long believed that this could be done any number of times, as many as people could think of, as long as it keeps those core traits. Which this does, mostly. It isn't a copy, it just rhymes. And the writers told me he has plans for hundreds of issues potentially, and maybe other works under their umbrella. But to get that far, they may need a little more manpower than they currently have, and the manpower they do have would need to be paid enough to quit their current jobs. So they need our support, and to put my money where my mouth is, I'll link their Patreon page, which I am pledged to, just over mine in the description. I'll also leave a link where you can get physical copies of this book, which they tell me will be available in a month or so. I hope this project succeeds and goes places, and hopefully this video helps get them a little closer to that horizon. Thanks for joining me this Bionicle Day. You know the drill, check out my books on Amazon and itch.io, and my Patreon page to get videos like this early, your name in the credits, behind the scenes content, a patron Discord server, signed copies of Planet Ripple, see pages before the book's release, and maybe even your own LEGO Rewind episode. See you next time. Toodles!